Hello, fellows. Just messed that up. Hello, fellow citizens. My name is Mr. Beat, and believe it or not, the United States is about to turn 250 years old. That's right, 2.5 centuries, I think is the math on that. July 4th, 1776, that was the day the United States of America officially became a country. And as we head towards that big milestone, I was like, okay, well, maybe we should start to prepare for this and reflect a little bit. But what should we be reflecting on? How should we talk about the current state of government, but also all of American history as we approach this milestone? What better person to speak with about the upcoming 250th anniversary of the United States, though, than Sharon McMahon, who I'm going to bring on screen here in a little bit, but I just wanted to introduce her. We collaborated last year. I got to meet her when she came to my hometown. Just a little background about Sharon. She's also a former government teacher in the classroom, like myself. Spent many years there, but also an author, a podcaster, has a newsletter on Substack. She's been nicknamed America's government teacher, which frankly, I was offended because I thought I was America's government teacher. I'm kidding. But no, Sharon has built a massive audience, particularly on Instagram, calmly, rationally explaining civics, American history, and just how government actually works. In that format, she does a phenomenal job reminding us to, take a deep breath, look at the context, read the primary sources. And despite being the basically female equivalent of me, her audience is a lot different than mine. That's why I've reached out to her, because there's not a whole lot of overlap. So I'm really excited every time we get the opportunity to collaborate, because I tend to focus on a lot of dead dudes. She tends to focus on non-dudes. Well, dudes and non-dudes. So she has a best-selling book called The Small and Mighty that highlights some of these lesser-known Americans who are non-dudes, who stood up for American ideals like democracy and the rule of law and civil rights. Sharon is someone I tremendously respect, so much that actually I haven't told her this yet, but I wish she would actually run for public office, maybe president. I'm not joking. She'd be a brilliant president. So, and a big reason why is because she probably doesn't want to do it. That would probably be like her least favorite thing to do. But anyway, so let's all give a warm welcome. If you're not if you're driving, don't clap your hands if you're driving right now, but if you're, just sitting somewhere, give a warm welcome. Start clapping your hands for Sharon McMahon.
Welcome. Hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful. All things considered, as I keep saying these days. How about you?
I'm hanging in there. I appreciate the warm welcome. That's very kind of you. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Here, I'm going to put it so that people can see our beautiful faces. They still see Beavis and Butthead though on here.
That's important. That's important.
Very important, especially these days. Okay, so Sharon, I reached out to you again because, this is we keep forgetting it, but this is the big year, 250 years. So I was like, okay, first of all, are you going to do anything, or you have any plans yet for the 250th anniversary?
Yeah, the semi-sesquicentennial.
I'm glad you said it, because I can't say that word.
The word on everybody's lips is semi-sesquicentennial. No, 250th anniversary. Well, I do have a children's book coming out to celebrate. And I am taking part in a really interesting project that is the sort of the brainchild of the former archivist of the United States, Colleen Shogan. And it involves an essay series from all of the all of the living former presidents of the United States, except for Biden and Trump. Trump's obviously still president, although he's also a former president, very unusual to have happen in the United States. So we're talking, of course, George W. Bush, Clinton, Obama, along with first ladies, along with former and current government officials, historians, and we are all writing individual essays about America's previous presidents and first ladies, and what are we meant to learn from them in this moment. And these are short essays that are going to be published for free. Anybody can read them, and hopefully they'll be useful in people's classrooms. Hopefully they'll just be interesting for individuals to read. And so I'm excited about that as part of our 250th celebration.
That's awesome. You kind of went out there for a second, but I think you're back. So hopefully, if in this chat, let us know if it's kind of laggy with the picture. But you're good now. So okay. That sounds amazing. You mentioned Colleen, right? Is her name?
Colleen Shogan, yes, is the archivist.
Yes, I'm actually going to have the opportunity to interview her when she's coming to the Dole Institute.
Oh, great!
And like
her. She's great. Colleen Shogan's great. Yes, you'll love her.
That's awesome. And for those who don't know, like I met Sharon in person when she came to the Dole Institute, which she was so popular that they actually had to move it next door to a bigger venue. It was just really exhilarating because I was like looking around and I was like, none of these folks probably watch my channel, but they're into what you're doing. And that means like, I have more hope that more people are actually paying attention to this stuff.
Yeah. Like same. And vice versa. A lot of, like you were saying earlier, a lot of the people who follow me probably don't watch you on YouTube. And the fact that you have this separate audience than me means that the audience of people who care about these topics is actually much larger than either one of us realizes.
Yeah. People just paying attention to American government for fun, not forced to in the classroom. Okay. So that's a cool. Anything else? Like, what are you actually doing on the 4th of July? Do you know that yet?
No, I don't know. I am working on another book project right now. So I am not traveling as much as I normally do. You know, like I normally do lots of public speaking, public appearances, like at KU where we met before. So I don't know. I don't have a party at Sharon's house on July 4th type scenario. I haven't thought about it yet. What are you doing? Are you going to sail on the Delaware River?
Hadn't thought about that, but no, like I did contemplate maybe going to DC, even though it'd be crazy. But it's kind of keeping it open, and we'll see what comes up. Kind of following also maybe the events that are happening.
Things keep occurring.
Yeah, it's a very it seems like it's a tumultuous time, and I know there's a lot of doomers that watch my channel that just like, how can we even think about the 250th when it seems like we have all these existential threats to the republic. So that's also, I think that's kind of why we need to reflect, because it's not like it's always been smooth sailing in the United States of America.
There hasn't.
Okay, so I have a list of questions here. If we don't get to all of them, that's okay. But we'll start with this one.
Okay.
When you look at the past moments of deep division in American history, what patterns do you see repeating today?
There's quite a few. There's quite a few patterns that I see repeating today, and I'd love to hear your take on this too. But one of them is the government's use of propaganda techniques that repeat from the past, and these are not specific to the United States. Other governments, other countries have used similar tactics. I have found the current recruitment advertisements from various government agencies very interesting. Have you been following these on Facebook at all?
I sometimes get the ads, for like ICE, to join ICE, like me.
Yeah, join ICE, but like protect the homeland. And they are very patriotic paintings from the past that are very sentimental, nostalgic. Protect the homeland and protect the American way of life. And it's like a a Norman Rockwell painting of a family, having a picnic by the river, and there's like a church in the background, and they're driving like a 1950s Chevrolet car. I think that's a really interesting concept of protect the homeland that we have seen repeated throughout history, again, here and abroad. We're also going through a period of anti-immigrant sentiment in the United States. And this is a repeating pattern in the United States. We've targeted different groups of immigrants throughout our history. We have a history of targeting immigrants from Asia. We have a history of targeting immigrants from Eastern Europe. We have a history of targeting Catholics and Jews. And of course, we have a history of targeting other groups for racial discrimination, of course. But this anti-immigrant sentiment is not a new idea in American history, but the current form that it is taking has some novel additions to it. So those are just two, like right off the top of my head, but I could keep going. I'd love to hear what some of yours are.
Yeah, I notice when I look at American history, there's like a 40-year cycle almost, like where you had this, because the United States has always had lots of immigrants, but the first big anti-immigrant xenophobic movement we saw pretty much like in the 1840s is a backlash to mostly Irish immigrants, which is crazy to think about. And then flash forward 40 years to like the 1880s, and that's when you have stuff like the Chinese Exclusion Act. And for the first time, now the people are racist towards Italians because that's like the predominant group coming over. Flash forward again to the 1920s, and this is the first time we have really strict immigration legislation by Congress. The first Red Scare, I think probably the worst xenophobia we've ever seen in the late teens, early 1920s. But then 40 years later is the 1960s, which it seems like it was going to happen. But then the civil rights movement just kind of slammed the door on it. And so I feel like it's been a long time since we've seen this kind of xenophobia. And yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me, too, that modern conservatism, like the type that Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush were proponents of, was largely pro-immigrant.
Absolutely.
They made a lot of very pro-immigrant speeches. Ronald Reagan made a very famous speech at the Statue of Liberty. George W. Bush is now, like, in his retirement, painting portraits of immigrants and like having art exhibits of his immigrant portraits and publishing books of his immigrant portraits. So I think this is also an interesting pendulum swing where for decades, since the early 1980s, conservatives have been proponents of sort of propping up, welcoming immigrants into the sort of the American way. They want to come here for a better life, and that's to be admired. They were often admired for their work ethic. They were admired for wanting to seek out a better life for their family, and we had all kinds of government messaging to sort of welcome immigrants from both ends of the spectrum. And I do think that has changed now. This is a novel moment.
Well, but also mentioning specifically division, you mentioned propaganda, which, yeah, we've seen that as well, like World War I. I know that's the thing that stands out the most, to recruit people for the war effort. But I mean, there's a lot of people that bring up the 1850s, understandably. They bring up that Civil War. I mean, can you even imagine a second Civil War? But I mean, more and more people are bringing this up. So how would you compare specifically the 2020s to the 1850s?
People ask me about Civil War all the time. Are we on the brink of another Civil War? And one of the things that I usually say is that it's the United States is now, we're now in a position of having it'd be very difficult geographically to fight a civil war. We are no longer as different as, say, New England is from Texas. These are very different places, clearly. As different as they are, we do not have a way to carve up the country into like North versus South, Union versus Confederacy, the way that we did in the 1850s, where these are the slave states, these are the free states. we don't have those sort of neat markers anymore. And what you have are regions of nearly every state that believe different things. California is a great example. We think of California as being this very liberal place, but there are actually millions and millions of Republicans, right-leaning people in California.
Yeah.
How do you, so is it just now Orange County fighting Los Angeles County? Like, how are we doing that? Do you know what I mean? Is it the Twin Cities of Minnesota fighting the rural areas? So the logistics of civil war are not at all clear to me anymore. I do, however, think we are already experiencing a type of Cold War, an ideological Cold War in the United States, in which, if you think back to the Cold War against the Soviet Union, against this battle between sort of free market capitalism versus the godless commies, as we viewed people who were communist nations during the Cold War, that was very much an ideological battle. We disagreed with who they were fundamentally. And it didn't matter if they had any good ideas, because who they were was corrupt to us. Who they were had been corrupted. You might have the Soviet Union have some great advancement for environmental pollution, and like it could save so many dollars. It would not matter, because who they were was, in our minds, fundamentally flawed. And I do think we see some evidence of that in the United States. Certainly not everybody. I don't want everyone watching this to be like, well, I don't think that. But I do think that there are, large swaths of Americans who feel like, if you are X, you're just a bad person. Nothing matters. You're just a bad person if you're woke. You're just a bad person if you voted for Trump. You're just a bad person if you don't believe X, Y, or Z. And there's this wholesale sort of ideological writing off of entire groups of people that I view as sort of a type of Cold War in the United States. But I don't see how the logistics for a hot war, a fighting war, work.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
What do you agree with me or no?
Mostly agree with you. I think that when we compare, like, say you mentioned Orange County, like an Orange County Republican compared to a Mississippi Republican, that's
Idaho Republican.
Yeah.
Different areas. I understand.
Yeah. Also, yeah, in Austin, Texas Democrat to Boston. I always compare Boston and Austin because it's the road trip. And they rhyme. Yes. Anyway, so that to me makes it seem like, like wars are often started by the extremists on sides. And so it may not matter that we have so many moderates in this country, that we have 60% of us that are actually agree on nearly everything. Actually, I think that the ones who are really desperate could like start stuff whether we like it or not. But like you said, to your point though, there's no way it would be like states versus states. It would be, I think, more urban versus rural. I've had people comment underneath my videos anytime I mention Civil War. They always say, "Oh, it'd be more like the Troubles of in Ireland." Yeah, like because you'd have asymmetrical. You'd have ambushes and terrorist attacks, probably. Yeah.
Yes. Rogue actors as opposed to state actors.
Yep.
So the Civil War, it's all state actors, the government of X fighting the government of Y, or the alleged government of Y, depending on your viewpoint. So we don't have state actors, but I certainly will grant that we could be in the position of having a significant amount of civil unrest.
Yeah.
It's different than a wholesale civil war like we see in some other countries that are happening right now.
It was interesting. Like, I know there's a lot going on in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, and seeing like the federal presence there with the Department of Homeland Security and ICE agents, but then also the National Guard coming in by the governor saying, hey, what if there was this clash, which you could see this happening between National Guard of one state against federal officers. Yeah. So I wonder if that could you think that could happen too more?
Yeah, I do think that's possible to have happen. It's something that I actually wrote about happening as a potential to have happen in November of 2024, after Trump won the election, but before he took office. It's one of the things that I said, I can see this happening in the future, where we have federal agents who are being opposed by state National Guard, or federalized National Guard troops from one state being sent to try to quell unrest in another state. So, for example, right now, the governor of Minnesota has put the Minnesota National Guard on standby. They have not been activated in the sense of like, get out there and march on the streets. But they've talked about the fact that they're activated. The Minnesota National Guard has been I'm sorry. They've talked about the fact that they're on notice. They've been posting on social media, saying, if we are called into, pressed into service, here's how we will be dressed. And they've posted pictures of their uniforms, and the fact that they will be wearing bright green fluorescent vests to distinguish themselves from other groups. They've been posting things like, we live here. We live in your communities, basically saying, don't target us. And then making statements like, we are here to protect the First Amendment rights of the citizens of Minnesota, which is the subtext of that is, we're here to protect Minnesotans from unfair constitutional encroachment on their First Amendment rights. That's the subtext, but they're not actually saying, boo ICE. You know what I mean? Like they're not coming right out and saying that, but they want to communicate the message of like, listen, we're one of you. But then in addition to that, you also have the announcement from the Pentagon saying that they have activated troops, active duty troops from Alaska, 1,500 active duty troops from Alaska. Well, where are they going? They've not actually said where they're going, but it's not lost on me that they have picked Alaska, and that we have two conflicts or potential conflicts that are brewing in the United States, or happening in the United States. One is in Minnesota, another cold place, and one is potentially in Greenland, another cold place. They're not calling up the Texas troops stationed down in one of Texas's many military bases. They're calling up people who have cold weather gear issued to them already, and they know how to use it. So I can also see the potential for either active duty military, and there is a difference, I'm sure you know, but to anybody listening, there's a difference between active duty military and a state National Guard. The state National Guards are not generally controlled by the president unless they are federalized. They're controlled by the governor of that state. So I can see the potential for the possibility, not today, but the potential lies on the horizon for a clash between active duty military, state National Guard from one state that maybe voluntarily is like, we'll take care of things in Minnesota. You let us know if you need us. And I can see the potential for that sort of clash occurring.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I can't help but think of like South Carolina and 1861 saying, hey, they're kicking the federal troops out. What if state militia kicks out the federal troops? That smells a lot like Civil War.
Shots around the world. Yes.
Yeah. It's a scary time. Well, okay. Looking at root causes of things. I wanted to ask you this question as well. I've been thinking a lot about the 1890s. I bring it up all the time. I'm making a video about it right now. I have this book by H.W. Brands, The Reckless Decades, about the 1890s. And I read it several years ago, and then I just recently bought it and read it again. And I was like, holy crap, the 2020s are the 1890s. And I was like, all these, which is weird to think about because like most people don't think that far back in history, just dorks like me. So I wanted to get your opinion on that. Like, do the 2020s feel like late Gilded Age, early Progressive era more, or do they feel more like Reconstruction? Because I've heard some people say no, it's actually more like that. Like, to me, it's kind of one. I don't even know if Reconstruction ever really ended. It's like we never resolved that.
Has
Yeah,
it been constructed?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, but
What is it?
specifically, yeah, but specifically 1890s. How do you feel? That was the decade of Plessy v. Ferguson.
Yeah.
But also the economic, like the trends with populism. That's the big one.
Yep. That's what my mind went to as well. And also the trends in the sort of the titans of industry. You can see the correlation between these sort of robber barons of the Gilded Age and the AI tech boom.
Yep.
And a small handful of people who are controlling vast quantities of a country's resources. I do think there's a correlation there as well. There were huge issues also in the 1890s, huge issues with government corruption. Huge issues with government corruption. And that's, of course, one of the things that Teddy Roosevelt became famous for. Was he was like, listen, I am going to clean this up. We are gonna have a merit-based civil service. We are not gonna just give jobs to our buddies. We are not like that was, imperfect as Teddy Roosevelt was, because all presidents have their foibles for sure. That was one of the things that Teddy Roosevelt became famous for before he ever was elected president. So yes, the progressive era was a swing of the pendulum away from this like cronyism, government corruption, robber barons, extraordinary economic growth into new areas. I can definitely see some overlap. And then also, as you're saying about populism, the populism at the time in the 1890s, in some ways was an answer to the cronyism of the late Gilded Age of like, hold on. We shouldn't have 9 people controlling everything in the country. So that is one way that I see it as being slightly different, is the right-wing populism of this moment feels different than the progressive era populism.
Yeah, I mean, at least rhetorically, though, there are similarities. Whenever you hear someone who leans to the right, like they first were attracted to Trump because he was the outsider who was going to drain the swamp. And obviously things didn't work out that way, but they still view him as somebody who's an outsider, just because he has that reputation of just doing things completely opposite of the traditional way of doing things. And so I think some of them do want to see the whole system burn down. And I do think, but there's also an element of on the left wing side of that as well. You have a lot of people that like, especially those who supported Bernie Sanders in 2016 and then 2020, to see that, the Democratic Party establishment just completely shut him out. And like a lot of, as we saw in 2024, a lot of those folks just abandoned the Democratic Party. And that's why this whole horseshoe theory thing comes up. But I have my own issues with that. But I see why people say that. But I think mostly when we talk about populism, we're just talking about kind of rhetoric against the elites, the establishment, the status quo. Yeah. Sorry, I do air quotes way too much.
Air quotes. It is interesting, and populism in today's moment is fascinating because the leaders of, by and large, the leaders of America's right-wing populist movement today are actually elite.
Yeah.
Right?
But they co-opted it. Yeah.
Nobody can claim that Donald Trump is not elite. He went to elite schools. He's a billionaire. He owns a trillion properties and golf courses. You can't tell me that if you own multiple golf resorts, you're not elite, right? He is elite, at least financially elite in the United States.
I was going to say, he was in that big club that George Carlin used to talk about, but then he kind of got out of that club. He was like a laughing stock. And that's when he like, you're going to laugh at me? Fine. I'm going to round up a bunch of the regular folk, and we're going to just burn this whole thing down. That's what I feel like. He was one of the elites, but then he was kind of like outcast in that.
Sure. Yeah, but what do you make of like Elon Musk?
Same. He was outcast as well.
But
Yeah.
personally ostracized, and that's where the grievance comes from, is the being personally ostracized.
Also, I think with him, it's weird because I think he legitimately is racist. He probably always has been. He just used to hide it.
Yeah.
And so he just, that kind of, once he went down the great replacement theory stuff, which I have a video about. Ooh, the look at the comments section of that one. It's just kind of crazy that he might be left leaning actually on some issues like environmental stuff, no doubt, still even. But then, when it came to like social issues and, what he calls woke, which it means different things to different people. But yeah, he had very passionate views. So that's why he aligned himself. But yeah, he used to be, both Trump and Musk used to be Democrats. So I think a lot of folks forget that. Okay, but no, we've been talking a lot about our division and the chaos. But do you have optimism about this upcoming 250th birthday? It possibly like forcing everyone to kind of just like hit the pause button. Every American is just like, wait a second, why do I love my country? And then maybe realizing, oh, maybe we should try to form some more coalitions with different people that I don't normally align with.
Well, the first thing is you bring up a really interesting point that I think so many people have forgotten about, especially online leftists. The idea that nearly any important thing that has happened legislatively in this country, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the 19th Amendment, et cetera, have all happened as a result of coalition and consensus building.
Yeah.
That we, as a pluralistic society, are never going to be in a position again where one party controls 80% of the seats of power. We are going to have to build coalitions to make things happen, because the alternative is endless quagmire. It is an endless cycle of doing nothing and infighting and not serving the American public. And so when we have created these purity tests of, I will not work with a person who believes X, even if what they want to work on is something that you actually really believe in, even if what they want to work on is free school lunches for kids, if they also believe X, I can't talk to them. I can't possibly work with them. And that is actually not how pluralistic representative democracies have gotten things done in the past. So I think that's an important point, that if we want to move the needle on behalf of American people, we have to be willing to align ourselves, not necessarily morally. We don't have to invite them for a sleepover. We don't have to be like, and now Elon Musk is my bestie. We don't have to say any of those things, but we do have to be willing to create coalitions that might actually make us hold our nose a little bit. There's this old phrase in deal making that if both of you aren't a little mad at the end of the day, that it's not a good deal. Like, you both have to be willing to give up a little of something that you want. And if it means just like moving the ball just a little farther down the field, if it means helping 3,000 more kids get school lunches, those kinds of things are worth it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, do I have optimism that Americans are going to come together on America's sort of 250th anniversary? I don't have optimism, but what I do have is hope. And those are two different things.
Yes, they are.
Optimism is this feeling that, like, hey, I really think things are going great. Skies are blue and the birds are chirping. And, I'm really optimistic that I can win this game against these kindergartners. I feel like my chances are good. I got a good shot at it. Hope is not that. Hope is a choice to act as though what we do matters. Because what we do does matter, and what we do makes a difference. And so we have to decide what kind of difference we want to make. And so I don't have optimism that we're going to have some kind of hair braiding sleepover event because of the 250th anniversary. You go to a lot of hair braiding sleepovers.
Not lately, no.
Not so many. But you understand what I'm saying. We're not going to have the Boy Scout campfire, tie the knots, roast the marshmallows as a nation. But I do have hope that Americans have succeeded at nearly everything they have put their minds to. We have succeeded at nearly everything we have put our minds to. And so if we choose to act as though what we do matters, we do have the opportunity to succeed. We do have the opportunity to make, as Ben Franklin said at the Constitutional Convention, to make this America's rising sun moment. That the sun is not setting on the Republic, the sun is rising on the Republic. We have that opportunity. And if we are looking around for an opportunity to burn it all down and a savior to ride in on a white horse with a scroll that they unfurl that says the plan, we're going to keep on waiting. That person with the plan, if they ever do arrive, wants to be a dictator. Probably shouldn't listen to that person with the plan as it is. I think we feel like we're waiting with bated breath for a savior, and not necessarily a Messiah figure, but we're waiting. Where's our Abraham Lincoln? Where's a leader to meet the moment, who is going to do the difficult thing, even when it's unpopular? And I strongly believe that if we're looking around for somebody to save us, we are just going to keep on waiting. And instead, we have to realize that we are the people we've been waiting for, and that each and every one of us has an important role to play in this entire ecosystem, that it is not up to a single leader or even 5 leaders or 25 leaders, that it's going to require effort on all of our parts, because democracy is a government of the people. Mm-hmm. That's what it is meant to be. And who are the people if not us?
I'm glad that that makes me feel better. But at the same time, there are literally people now afraid that the midterm elections aren't going to happen. Mm-hmm. There are people afraid that democracy itself is going to be undermined if we have the midterms, that Republicans are going to undermine them at every chance they get. There are people now who every day, based on what's going on with ICE agents, of course, with the murder of Renee Good, like a week and a half ago at the time of this live stream, I mean, every day I feel like I go online and like a radical is born, or like 100 radicals are born. And to me, that's a little alarming, because like typically when we talk about radicals, we think more French Revolution. We don't think American Revolution, where you mentioned Benjamin Franklin and these level-headed guys like James Madison saying, okay, no, let's think about all this. It's very complex. Let's compromise on a bunch of things. So, yeah, what about that aspect of it? The fact that there are continuing to be, especially on the left end of the political spectrum, it feels like there's a lot more radicalization going on at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I'm certainly not discounting the difficulty that we face. I do not look at America with rose-colored glasses and I'm like, you guys, kumbaya. Let's just get along. These are all very real problems that we actually do have to contend with. But radicalization comes from feeling an extraordinary amount of grievance, right? A grievance towards a group that we feel has wronged us in some way. Whether that grievance is warranted or not, it might even just be perceived grievance when we're just perceiving that somebody is that somebody's wronging us and they're actually not. But that grievance, we have to look at what is underneath that. It is feeling as though you are being disenfranchised, you are not being listened to, your concerns are not being addressed. You see corruption, you see this big lack of transparency. Those things create the grievance that leads to radicalization. These things do not just pop out of nowhere in a vacuum, right? So if we want to get to this, like the heart of what is radicalizing people, we have to get at what is underneath that. And that means holding power to account, holding power to account. And I understand that that's easier said than done. And some people are going to leave comments in the comments and they're going to be like, how are we supposed to do that? Blah, blah. You're like, I understand what you're saying. I'm not looking at this situation from a position of naivete. But if we're just like, oh my gosh, everybody's radicalized, the sky is falling, that's actually not going to lead us anywhere fruitful. That's not how we're going to get ourselves out of this mess. And I can tell you that hate and bigotry has never led America or any society somewhere worth going. Mm-hmm. That hate is not going to get us out of this mess. As much as we might think to ourselves, I hate that person, I hate that group of people, I hate that leader, I hate those officers, that hatred is not going to lead us on a path to prosperity and justice and peace for all of our neighbors. And so I think it behooves us to remember that we have a responsibility to conduct ourselves in a certain way. And that does not mean not fighting for truth and justice and peace and goodness. I do think it's our job to fight for those things. But underneath that grievance is a lack of justice. It's a lack of truth. And if we can get at those core American ideas that are set out in the preamble to the Constitution, to establish justice and, to fight for domestic tranquility and, to protect our citizens and, all of these ideals that were set down on paper as America's North Star. How will America know it has been successful in its endeavors? When America is just, when it is peaceful, when it is good, and when it is free. Those are the four concepts that are contained in the preamble to the Constitution. And
say that again. I never heard it worded that way before.
Yeah, if you take the concepts in the preamble and you take all the 1700s language out of it, the concepts are just, peaceful, good, and free.
I like it.
Those are the four. We can ask ourselves, do my actions align with these concepts? Does this leader act in a way in accordance with justice and peace? Should I continue to vote for them if they do not? It helps to know like what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And to me, those are fundamental American ideals that we can all share, no matter who we might have voted for, no matter what letter might be behind our name.
And I think it's also important for people that lean to the left that, hey, most Trump supporters were just tricked. They were, the most successful con artist of all time tricked them. And I think that they're victims. And I'm very sensitive about this because when I was a young man, I was more susceptible to demagogues as well. And if I was a certain age, probably when Trump was running in 2015, 2016, I probably would have fallen for it as well. So I think I don't like it how we just brush off tens of millions of people. And when, most of my family is still in that camp and they're good people. They're not racist. They are just in despair. I think a lot of them, we don't, like you were saying, this is to just come out of nowhere. I think radicalization builds up over not just years, but decades of broken promises. You have this false hope. You know, you go back all the way to Ronald Reagan, and when he was president when I was born, and I think about how he was so inspirational to so many Americans. And then as a young man watching Barack Obama run for president, so like hope was literally the word that he used more than anything for his campaign in 2008. And there's just this bitterness that just is inevitable whenever you feel like progress isn't being made, or if there is progress, it's token. And so, yeah, like I just think that all of the grievances, I think, are legitimate. The problem is for those who don't think critically about these things. That's a nice way to put it. Probably still makes me seem like I'm elitist, but if you don't think critically about these things, it's just much easier to scapegoat. People on the left automatically scapegoat billionaires, which, okay, maybe they have a little bit more legitimate scapegoating. But people on the right scapegoat immigrants or whatever other marginalized group popped up that like coincided with
trans people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, usually transgender and immigrants are the two groups still now. And so I think that's where when I make a lot of my videos, I'm always like, okay, how can I humanize this marginalized group in a way where the viewer doesn't even realize like you do that so well, by the way, like with all your videos and your writing. I just think maybe give a Actually, let me see if this relates to one of my questions for you. You spend a lot of time correcting myths. What's a true story you like to share about like just an ordinary American making a huge difference? And why should every American know about this ordinary American as we approach our 250th birthday?
I love that question. I think that's a great question. And I want to preface this by saying when we're talking about like when people like you, people like me, we talk about civic engagement, we talk about, being involved in our democracy, being involved in our communities. I think people take that to mean as engaging only with the government.
Or federal government.
Yes. Like calling your congressman. That's how they interpret that that's how they understand that. Yeah. And in reality, when you look at the people who have ordinary citizens who have made really, really enormous differences in their communities throughout American history, many of them were not engaging with the government at all. Many of them were only working in their own communities. The people that we admire from history, like, for example, the Harriet Tubmans of the world. What percentage of the time was Harriet Tubman engaging with the government? Tiny percentage of the time. She does work as a Union spy. So you can say that is engaging with the government in some fashion, that she's helping during the Civil War. She does help save some soldiers during like 500 soldiers, people during the Civil War. And you could say that that's engaging with the government. She does have some contact with some government officials in her later years. But what we actually really, if I said, what was Harriet Tubman really known for? What do you admire about her? Most people would not say, wow, her legislative record. Right? Like that's not what we admire about her. What we admire about her are the character traits she embodied in her own community. The courage, the fortitude, the foresight, the love of her neighbor, all of these character qualities that she used to act in a civic fashion in her own community. So that's one thing that I try to remind people of is civic engagement is more than just calling people who are your elected representatives. It's actually acting for the betterment of your community. And sometimes that means being a substitute teacher at your local elementary school, because that is acting in betterment of your community. So one person from history that I love to think about is a woman named Septima Clark, who was born in the late 1800s. She's born in the 1890s. And her parents were enslaved. and she becomes a teacher. And she is an African-American woman who, at the time when she became a teacher, was not allowed to teach in Charleston public schools because Charleston public schools did not hire Black teachers, period. Didn't matter if it was for a segregated school or not. So she was forced to teach on an island off the coast of South Carolina and did that for a period of time. She has a baby and the baby dies. She has another baby, and shortly after that discovers that her husband has a secret second life and is married to a different woman and has different children with this other woman. And then he has the audacity to die and leave this like entire mess for her to clean up, that, you know, like she wasn't his only wife. And throughout her career as a teacher, she works to help correct some of the injustices people like her faced. And at the time, Black teachers made less than white teachers for doing the exact same job. And female teachers made less than male teachers. So being a black woman educator, she was on the lowest rung of the ladder of how much she could get paid. She's getting paid like $700 a year, and her white male counterparts are getting paid like $4,500 a year during this time period.
Wow.
Like the differential was massive. So she participates in some lawsuits that help equalize, equal work for equal pay. Well, as you can imagine, this did not make her popular amongst the school board. They saw what she was doing. She was suing them. They were having to pay out all this more money. It did not make her popular. And they saw that she belonged to a civil rights organization called the NAACP. And they decided, as they did in the 50s, anything they didn't like, if you just slapped a communist label on it, you could get rid of it. It's like today with woke, right? If it's woke or DEI, put a DEI label on it and it's done. We're just going to write it down and like, done. No more money for you. We're done. So if you could label it communist, it was dead to you. So they labeled many civil rights organizations as communist in the 1950s. And they told teachers like her, not just her, but teachers around the country, if you don't stop belonging to this communist organization, you're going to get fired. And she's like, well, I'm not going to give up my civil rights organization membership. So I guess you'll have to fire me. And so they did. They fired her. And I love to think about like this moment maybe that she had where she was like, y'all don't know what you just did. Because now I have all the time in the world to work on civil rights. Before I was out here grading the papers and doing the lesson plans. Now I have all day and all night to be a thorn in your side. So she gets a job in Tennessee and moves to Tennessee and begins teaching at an organization I'm sure you are familiar with called the Highlander Folk School, which was an important civil rights training ground for people who would later go on to be big movers and shakers in the civil rights movement. You would go there for like a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time. It was almost like a summer camp for adults. And you went there and you got sort of all day trainings of how to organize in your communities. Well, had Septima Clark not gone to Highlander Folk School, not gotten fired from her job, not moved to Tennessee to work at this school, she would not have been able to start this concept of something called citizenship schools. And suddenly citizenship schools, as a result of her efforts and those who assisted her, hundreds of them sprung up around the American South and helped move people who previously did not have access to literacy, help them learn how to read, moved them onto the voter rolls, taught them how to write letters to their representatives, taught them how to run for government, taught them how government worked. So 700 citizenship schools begin schooling tens of thousands of people who never had access to this kind of information before. And as a result of her moving there, she teaches multiple people who go on to change the trajectory of not just American history, but of world history, because so much of what America does impacts the rest of the world. She teaches John Lewis and she teaches Rosa Parks. And in fact, the Montgomery bus boycott begins not long after Rosa Parks left Highlander Folk School.
There she is.
Yes.
Parks.
Not long after Rosa Parks left Highlander Folk School, where she was taught by Septima Clark. So in many ways, Septima is regarded by scholars as the mother of the civil rights movement.
Dang, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I think I first heard of her because of you, actually.
Yes. But yet she did, aside from participating in some of these lawsuits, almost none of her work was directly on elected officials. It was not her going to Congress. It was not her running for mayor. It was her working in her communities, the communities that she lived in. And then the work of the people that she worked with changed the course of history. So beautiful. I love to remind people that your civic action is not just working on the government, it's working in your communities. And we all have a different role to play.
Yeah, more examples of that. I like to share what's going on right now because I see a lot of hope with, and obviously I lean to the left. I grew up conservative, but now I lean to the left. So that's my own bias. But like, I see things that I'm passionate about, like new urbanism, very dorky, but the movement of the YIMBY movement, folks in cities around the country who are basically saying yes to more dense zoning and more roundabouts and more bike lanes. These things actually have like ripple effects that you can't even see for probably a generation at least. We're going to see it in 20 years, but they have that vision. More examples like ordinary folks, like the dude who had the inflatable costume that protested in Portland. I don't know what his name was, but the cute inflatable frog protester, who I'm talking about in Portland. Like I think that we will actually probably remember that person, even if we don't know their name. We'll remember them for a long time because of how symbolic it was. I mean, all the protesters right now against ICE, the folks who are hiding immigrants in their homes. Maybe you don't agree with that, but it doesn't matter. Like, I think that the people who are doing this, they believe in human rights. They believe that all human beings are equal. And so you could compare them to all the nameless people will never remember their names who hid runaway slaves via the Underground Railroad. John Brown always gets all the attention, especially around here in Kansas. But yeah, there were so many people that did that hid people in their homes. I just think that there's a lot of people right now making history. And I guess it's really cool to hear, like, if you focus on your neighborhood, then maybe you won't get overwhelmed. Because it can be so overwhelming looking at all the zeitgeist. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. The system is actually designed to overwhelm you into paralysis. People who seek to grab power, people who seek to seize and consolidate their own power, intend to overwhelm you so that you will feel completely frozen. You'll be fight or flight will be, activated. Or your fight, flight, or freeze. You'll just be like, I don't know what to do. This is another important thing that anybody who is like a researcher of freedom movements throughout history, whether that is abroad or in the United States. If you're familiar with the work of Tim Snyder, who's a political scientist, he's written a book called On Tyranny, another one called On Freedom. He talks about this too, that anybody who is feeling overwhelmed by the amount of things that they are supposed to be like paying attention to, first of all, understanding that that's part of the intent. They're intending to try to make you feel overwhelmed. First of all, that's normal. But the second way to get out of this feeling of overwhelm is to just pick one thing to work on and just work on that one thing. That none of us are able to just like fix it, wave your wand and fix it. Fix it. Well, one of the 20 million things that are going wrong in the world right now. That is a great way to make nothing happen. Whereas if you focus on one problem or one issue, It could be in your own community. It could just be like a niche little weird interest topic, your urbanization topic, your urban planning topic. I believe that people have these kinds of passions for a reason. They make sense in your mind. They light up certain sensors in your brain. I think people are given those topics for a reason, and they are meant to do something with those topics. Some of us care a lot about kids eating dinner. Some of us care a lot about kittens in the animal shelter. Some of us care a lot about things like immigrant rights. Some of us care a lot about environmental pollution. Fill in the blank. There's no limit to the number of things, but nobody can do all of these things. In fact, I would be really, really useless engineering a bridge in Nairobi. Don't try to ask me to do that. That's how people are going to die, right?
But the president can fix it all, right? He said, "I alone can fix it."
I alone can fix it. So use what you have, where you are, with the resources available to you, and the passions that you and interests that you have been given. Mine are different than yours. And that's actually a good thing. Pick one thing and work on it, and refuse to listen to the voices that tell you that you have to do everything. That's a great way to do nothing. Trying to do everything is a great way to do nothing.
Dang, you got some good takes here. Well, you want to know what I'm focusing on? Maybe you're already aware.
I do.
Okay, so this is something I decided I was going to do as a New Year's resolution, but in some in the chat, probably you go ahead and predict what I'm about to say. Okay. Well, no one's got it yet. I every day have been writing my congressman. I write a letter every single day. And the issue that I'm most passionate about is representation reform. I think that it's a national tragedy that we've had only 435 representatives in the House. More or less since 1929. So it's been almost 100 years.
Yeah.
Despite the population quadrupling in that same span. And so, George Washington, this is the issue he was most passionate about at the Constitutional Convention. Was he was pushing for one of the Bill of Rights that didn't get passed. There was 12 originally, and one of the 12 was Article the First, and it was said that for every representative, or you have one representative for every, I think it was 30,000 constituents. And now the average representative represents around 760,000 constituents. Yeah. So anyway, I'm writing my congressman, Tracy Mann, every single day. One of my former students is actually, he works in his office, and he called me, and you could tell that he was being polite. But he's like, yeah, we appreciate you doing what you're doing. And I asked, hey, can I meet up with my representative? And he politely declined. My representative, who is a very red district that I live in, he has no interest. He has no incentive. I don't blame him to get back to me. All he sent me so far is one generic copy paste from Wikipedia response saying, this is how representation works. Sending it to a government teacher, like, oh, thanks. I didn't know that. Yeah. But anyway, no, so far I've been doing this is January 20th. I've been doing this every day now. This is my 20th day of doing it. I'm going to do it until I'm just going to keep doing it. There's no end date to this. I'm trying to and so I'm right now at this point, I'm focusing on can you just give me one reason why you don't support uncapping the House? Because I just want, at this point, there's not even a bill on the floor that says uncap the House. The next census is coming up here, 2029. This is a good time to do it. It's on the 100-year anniversary of the last time we expanded the House, or that when we first capped the House to 435. So I just feel like this is the issue that is actually the root cause of so many other issues we have. If you have better representation, you have better, first and foremost, you have members of Congress who are more in touch with their constituents because they're more connected to them, because they're not overwhelmed when you have 760,000 people or 1 million. Some of them have 1 million constituents.
Way more. The people who represent districts in California have way more than that in some places. Yeah.
You're right. Actually, yeah. Like, okay, maybe I can persuade, because I have inspired some folks to write their own members of Congress. I would you like to join me in this fight? Like, so, would you be willing to endorse? I have a bunch of other steps in this. I don't want to put you on the spot right now, but I know, has this been an issue you've even thought about? Has been on your radar?
Yeah, yes, I've brought this up multiple times that like if you live in Alaska, you're getting way more representation in Congress than if you live in a really big state. You just are. And
Yeah.
I have a funny story for you. A couple years ago, Tracy Mann's office invited me to stop by. And
Really?
so I went when I was in DC. I was there. I was invited by my
Well,
representative.
hold on. Guys, that's my rep that I'm trying to reach who won't get back to me. Okay, go ahead. What the heck?
Yeah. Okay. So I was invited by my representative as his guest to attend the State of the Union address.
Okay. Oh, nice.
And so I had posted that I was attending the State of the Union, and a number of other representatives' offices, Becca Balint and Tracy Mann and a number of other people all messaged me, and they're like, we'd love to have you come by. So I went to Tracy Mann's office. He has a giant couch with a big leather cowhide on the back of his couch in his office. Yeah. And so I talked for a while. I actually filmed several things. I still have the film in his legislative director's office. And here is one of the things that I asked him that this might be of interest to you. I said, how many phone calls does it take for you to be like, hold up, we have an emergency on our hands? And for you to get Tracy on the phone and be like, we got something we need to deal with here. And he said 200 to 300.
In what time span?
Like in a day.
Okay. That's good information, though.
200 to 300 phone calls, I guess, in a short period of time. It wouldn't necessarily have to be in a 1 hour time period. But if you got 300 phone calls in 2 days, that would be an emergency, according to your representative's legislative director.
Nice.
So if you can get 200 to 300 constituents to call, you could create an emergency that he would have to pay attention to. And it doesn't have to be an emergency like the house is on fire. What he meant by emergency is like people really care about this topic.
Yeah, because so far he's been able to ignore it. It is weird. Like I said, dude, like I have a following. Like, can I at least get? It'd be good PR at least, maybe to nothing. And so it's cool that you got to talk to my representative.
It's so great, Sharon, that they contacted you instead of me.
You know what's funny?
That makes sense.
It's really easy for me to, not really easy, but because now that I'm an established YouTuber, I have talked to other members of Congress. Like I talked to Ro Khanna, no problem. Yeah, I'll meet up with you. Like it's to me, the fact that I can't even get a meeting with them is the exact reason why we need to uncap the House.
Yeah. I have a theory about this. I have a theory about why it's easier to meet with other members of Congress. Of course, when you have a following, they're way more willing to talk to you. That's just true. But when you meet with Ro Khanna, or when I call up somebody else and be like, do you have time to talk to me about this? They are talking theoretically.
Yeah.
When they are talking to a constituent, they are being pressed into service. The mindset shifts into like, they actually want me to do this, or they're not going to vote for me, as opposed to Ro Khanna talking to you. If he doesn't do what he says he's going to do, nothing bad happens to him. You were never going to have the opportunity to vote for him anyway. So I do think some of it has to do with like this idea of theoretical, fun conversations about big picture ideas versus like, I want you to actually pass this bill, and you need to because you represent me. It's a different mindset of why I think it's sometimes harder to get a meeting with your own representative.
And it is a myth that they don't respond at all. I'm glad you hit that point about the 200 to 300 phone calls, because, I mean, at the end of the day, sure, it may seem like they only listen to their donors, and it's easy just to pass it all off that way. But no, like they do want to like check the vibes every day. Like, what's the vibes of my people?
Yeah.
That's why you see these giant omnibus bills that get passed only because a senator is like, yeah, this is really important to my constituents in my state.
Yeah.
So I just realized we're over an hour already. So I dang.
We could just keep on chatting.
Yeah, no, I do have some super chats. So I'm going to answer. We'll go through the ones that I think that you'll be comfortable answering.
Okay.
And we'll just kind of wrap things up here. Yeah,
okay.
Like somebody noticed your U.S. Grant book in Ulysses Grant, I think is what they meant to say.
Yeah.
In the background.
Yeah.
That's their favorite president. I have a lot of viewers of this channel love Grant.
Okay.
Can you share your thoughts on President Grant?
Yeah. Well, Grant was obviously really, really pivotal in the moment that he arrived. Like he arrived at a moment when America needed him. And so I think he, in many ways, rose to this important moment. There are things I disagree with Grant on, one of them being that he wanted to expel Jews from the United States. That's a move I can't get behind. But I do appreciate that he was somebody who rose to his moment when his moment arrived. And almost all of us, maybe not militarily, maybe not from a governmental standpoint, but almost all of us will have a moment in our lives when we can either move forward with courage or retreat. And he is a great example of somebody who moved forward with courage when his moment arrived. And that's something that all of us will probably face at some point in our lives, and something we can learn from Grant.
Heck yeah. This Gabe says, how would George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, FDR, and Ronald Reagan feel that America is turning 250? That's a lot of presidents in one question. And what was it? I guess maybe like the thing that all of them have in common as far as how they would reflect upon America turning 250.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that George Washington, when America was first formed, when we wrote the Constitution, he, like many other people at the Constitutional Convention, was worried. They were worried that the system that they were building would not hold. It was a legitimate concern that they had, which is why they built two different ways to change the Constitution right there into the document. Because they were like, we can't see what's ahead. Y'all are going to need to clean some of this up. So I think George Washington would actually be exceptionally pleased that we have made it to 250 without having a despotic king come to power. I think he'd be extremely pleased. I think Lincoln would be pleased to know that the Union still holds, that the Union is indissoluble. And that it still exists today. I think he would be so proud of that fact. Teddy Roosevelt would not like what we are doing with federal lands. He would not like us drilling in the Arctic. He would not like our lack of care for our rolling back of all of these EPA regulations. He would not be into that. But I think he would still have an excitement for this idea of like, look at what we have accomplished in our 250 years. FDR probably have some, fireside chat words to give us about we face dark days, that it seems as though the proverbial wolf is at the door, and yet we have nothing to fear but fear itself, and that together we can move forward into a brighter future. He would probably say something along those lines. And Ronald Reagan had, in many ways, like his policies, not like his policies, he had a great sense of humor. And one of the things I appreciate about Ronald Reagan was his ability to make fun of himself. And he, at the time, was one of the oldest presidential candidates to run for office and become president. And he frequently made jokes about his own age. He would probably make a joke about how America is finally as old as he is. And I think that would be like a welcome moment of levity, like we're finally as old as me. I know that I people tend to like people who can make fun of themselves, who can laugh at themselves. It's an endearing quality when you can laugh at yourself and not just be offended by everybody, laughing behind your back. So I like that about him. And I do think Ronald Reagan would caution us about this very anti-immigrant moment that we are in. He would say that this is not the path to American prosperity, that the American economy depends on immigrant labor, that immigrants pay tens of billions of dollars in taxes, that this is all an important part about American prosperity, and that they have the right to participate in the American dream too. So I think they would all have different viewpoints on us being 250, but there's something we can learn from each one of them.
I feel like FDR would be the most prescient figure to like, we could somehow resurrect him, with what's going on with the rise of fascism around the world. I think at this point,
he would have some thoughts about that. He'd have some thoughts.
Although I do think what's weird is, like, they say history rhymes, or Twain said that, I guess, but like, it does seem that, and there's other historians that say, oh, we're kind of overdue, like the 80-year cycle of like a major conflict around the world. Sure. I think that the next 10 years are going to be, I've been telling a lot of people this, they're going to be turbulent and chaotic compared to the previous few decades. Yeah. That doesn't mean it's going to be World War III. That doesn't mean it's going to be Civil War. So perhaps your final thoughts on how you're feeling about, as we approach the 250th birthday, the direction of the country obviously is alarming, but how do you think it's going to turn out, like in a few years, 10 years? How do you think it's going to turn out? What's your prediction?
Gosh, I don't have any good prognostications about, like, well, in 10 years we're all going to be driving flying cars. I don't have any good predictions.
Oh, come on.
Of that nature. But I will say that if I'm going to bet on something, it would be the American people. If I'm going to bet on something, I believe that the American spirit is alive and well. And despite many pieces of evidence to the contrary, I really do believe in my fellow Americans to be able to rise to a moment when their moment arrives. And I do feel like this is our moment. It's time for us to rise to our moment.
Yeah, I see a lot of people already doing that, and that's what continues to inspire me. And the story is never. It's always just like we think it's ending. I always bring up the end of the Cold War, like, oh, it's just the end of history. Like some historians said, no, man, it's like just a whole new chapter. So,
and we are not the first people to live through difficult times. Other people with far fewer resources and way less education have lived through very difficult times. And if they can do it, so can we.
We'll end it right there. That's perfect. Sharon McMahon, thank you for joining me for this.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's such an honor to interview you and talk with you anytime. Is there anything you would like to promote before I end this stream?
Gosh, this was really fun. It's fun to chat with you. It's always fun. Like when you're real nerdy about a topic and you meet somebody else who is the same level of nerdy, it's a very exciting process. It's always exciting. Yeah. Well, what about this? What do you think about the 1890s? I don't know. What do you think about the 1890s? You're like, it's a very exciting.
And the chat, like the chat's been, I mean, there's trolls always, but for the most part, yeah, they're dorking out with us. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So it's really fun to be with all of you. If you want to check out my work, you can follow me on Instagram at Sharon Says So. I'm on TikTok as well. You can also visit my website, SharonMcMahon.com, where my new children's book is linked. I have a newsletter called The preamble.com. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Heck yeah. Thanks for being here. And thanks for everyone watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks everyone. See you later.